proof from experiments. And the last time we discussed that Free Willy, who uses logic to convince a determinist, implicitly agrees to a number of things, namely that that reality behaves consistently, because that is linked to logic, and also that his debating partner exists in material reality. So if his debating partner exists in material reality and he agrees implicitly that material reality behaves consistently, he agrees that his debating partner behaves consistently, and then you have determinism proved, because that is linked to causality and everything. All the matter in his brain, everything that generates his actions and his thoughts, are all caused by other events previous in time. Now I will come with empirical evidence. So say you're a Free Willy and you claim to be a ruthless empiricist, for better or for worse. Then you have the following problem with this experiment. It is done in 1983 by Benjamin Libet. It was a groundbreaking paper at the time. The setup is as follows. You have a test person who sits in front of a clock with a rotating arm. The arm rotates rather fast. Every 2.5 seconds it makes a full rotation. Then the test person his head is wired up, so they can monitor his brain activity, especially the motor activity part in his brain. And he is asked to flip his wrist at a certain moment and to record where the arm of the clock was when he took the decision to flip his wrist. And it turns out that if you then calculate the time from the arm position of the clock on which he made his decision, and you compare that to the activity in his brain, you see that his brain activity started before he claims to have consciously decided to flip his wrist. So the normal Free Willy order of things would be: you take a decision and then the whole central planned coordination, top-down motor stuff is put in action, and it ends with your wrist being flipped. But that is not what the evidence shows. The evidence shows that the first brain activity starts, and a little bit later the test persons say that they consciously taken the willed decision to flip their wrists. These experiments have been repeated many times, also in different forms, to decide only to flip a wrist left or right, or in different variants. I post a link of a paper that gives a nice oversight on the sidebar here. The paper is of two people, Opni and Hagar, an American scientist, in 2004, so it's more recent. They added something that is also quite interesting. They connected voluntary and involuntary motion. So they had a person pressing a key with his finger, but there was also a little device that could make him press the key. And they had something on his head to give him a twist on his motor, a little shock on his motor part of his brain. And the conclusions from that were that there is some binding mechanism that causes intentional actions to be attracted temporarily to perceived effects. So it differed whether they pressed the key themselves or whether it was pressed by that motor device. If they pressed it themselves, they thought it was closer in time linked to the effects of that pressing than when it was pressed by someone else. So apparently your brain projects in time back and moves your will in time closer to an action that you perceive to have been affected by you. This is only slightly, of course, because if you move it, say 30 seconds apart, then it doesn't work anymore. People clearly notice there's something wrong. They did the same thing with someone moving a mouse, and then actually someone else was moving the mouse, and they also thought that their action was earlier than it actually was, because they saw the mouse moving. So yeah, that is the main problem for, and Daniel Libet himself, however, did not say that therefore there's no free will and there's determinism. He said that now logically only a free won't was possible. So there, according to him, you could have an intervention at the last moment. So the muscles work in a way that several milliseconds before the muscle movement, it cannot be stopped. Once the pulse is in your arm here, the nerve pulse, then the muscle movement will occur. It can no longer be stopped. The electricity will it's just physics all the way. It's clear that you can experiment it 1,000 times. It will happen 1,000 times. Once the nerve is activated, the muscle will contract. So everyone agrees that there is no free will intervention there. But the problem with free willies is, of course, that if you follow the nerve impulse back into the brain, then suddenly they say, okay, then it is no longer deterministic. So the first neuron where it comes from, the impulse, is can that neuron do something on its own outside of what the laws of nature dictates? And free willies say, yeah, in the brain is an exception to the laws of physics. So your legs and muscles cannot suddenly decide to jump 10 meters high or something because you're bound by the laws of physics, but your brain neurons can suddenly decide to disobey the laws of physics and do something different than what their inputs demand. And Libet still holds onto that idea, and he says, okay, once the nerve activity, the motor action is started before the willed action, he cannot deny that on the account of the evidence, but he says there is a small window of time opportunity when this pulse could be inhibited. So there build up an action potential in the brain, but before it goes out as a pulse and it becomes completely deterministic according to everyone, you could have an inhibition, and that's what's he calling a free won't. So that is the most that is possible with this evidence, that is a free won't, an inhibition of actions. But a free will is just from the timing of the events, it's just not possible. So that was my empirical proof for determinism. Let me know what you think. Okay, bye.